online pipe community. How the heck are ya? Ethan, Parsimonious Piper here. Been a week or two since we've done one of these. A couple weeks. Last week I was out of town on company business, so I only got to smoke a single pipe all week, so no videos for me. Today we are going to dive back into C.S. Lewis' Mere Christianity with a morsel for mental manducation. First, the housekeeping. In a darkly stained Pipe by Lee 3-star billiard, I have got some of Emerson Southern Forged Blind Monkey cigar leaf series. We're going to talk about this one tomorrow. Hold on for that one. So diving back into Lewis. Where we left off. To recap, we had discussed the two major possibilities of the universe having just spontaneously erupted and life as we know it having randomly evolved. We saw that the odds of even the simplest protein forming, though, are 1 in 2 to the 132, which is small enough that no one would take that seriously, except in this one instance. So, at least for the sake of argument, having dispensed with the notion that all of this occurred just by chance. Then the question becomes, well, if it didn't occur by chance, then what or who is guiding it? What we looked at last time was that this creator, if you want to call it this being that, we're using the term God, that this God appears to have some keen interest in morality, in good and bad. And that our evidence for that is the existence of a universal moral law that everyone seems to agree on the basics of. This is good. You're going to see me looking at this occasionally. It very nice blend. And so, last time we took a look at the possible views of the character of this God, whether this God is interested or not interested in morality. And again, for the sake of discussion, the moral law seems to indicate that he is, in fact, interested in goodness. Well, that leads us then into the next problem, and that is this problem of we have a universe that we can see is full of frequent bad or meaningless events. And yet here we are, capable of understanding and acknowledging that so much that happens in this universe is in fact bad or meaningless. Well, within theism, the two major views, again, are that either this universe was created good and it has been corrupted. It has become something bad. This, contrary to Lewis, I'm just going to call that a moral monotheism. Because Judaism, Christianity, and Islam all teach this belief. It's not unique to Christianity. But this view is that God, a God, created this universe and created it good, but that since that creation, it has been corrupted. The major opposing view to this would be what he calls dualism, and most of your polytheistic religions fall into this camp, where there are good and evil forces. If they're polytheistic, then you have sometimes teams of gods. The Greeks loved and Romans loved to tell stories this way. Some of whom on any given issue are in the right and some are in the wrong. Some are good, some are bad. But the major thrust of dualism is that there are two opposing forces in the universe that are at odds with each other, that are battling it out. And that one of those forces is good and the other is bad or evil. Well, we immediately run into a problem with dualism. And that is, how do we define which side of these two opposing forces is good and which is evil? Do we simply side with whichever one gives us results that we like? That's not really good in any objective sense. It's just self-interest. Maybe that's what morality is. Except that we've already seen that morality is not self-interest, because morality very often requires us to do things that are not in our self-interest because they are right. So that one doesn't quite work in that regard. How do we then choose of the two dualities, which one is good and which one is evil? Well, we apply a yardstick, a moral yardstick, and where does that come from? Well, it has to either come from one of them or from outside of them. And then again, this makes our moral compass something given to us, something divine. And so in that sense, dualism fails the test of really explaining what it is that we observe in our universe. Now, atheism was too simple. In that it does not account for creation even, much less the existence of morality. But Lewis points out there's something else that's also too simple, and we really should avoid it. And that is a childish, not childlike, a childish, watered down Christianity. This is a simple faith that says, God exists, God is good, that's enough. Well, that's not childlike in the sense that Christians were commanded to have a childlike faith. A childlike faith is a simple, trusting faith. It is not a foolish or ignorant or unthinking faith. sometimes reality is not simple. In fact, most of the time, reality is not simple. And Lewis points this out. If one were to just make up a religious framework, it seems that it would be something simple, easy to follow, always easy to understand. It's not the case with Christianity. Christianity actually mirrors, in some ways, the more complex realities of the world around us. An example would be looking at an apple sitting on a table. Well, the simplistic view of that is, well, I see the apple because I turned the light on, and the light exposes the apple. Okay? That's all true, but for many people it's not enough. When we begin examining, how do we actually see the apple? Well, we have a light source, true, but those lights travel in rays to the apple, and they are reflected. They're reflected at angles that are governed by physical principles. They're reflected in spectra that give us an idea of color. They're reflected onto a very complex surface that then decodes those signals, turns them back around right side up for us, tells us what the colors are. It's very complicated. The deeper we look, we find out that contrary to if we had made the rules, and indeed people thought these rules were followed initially, if we had made the rules, light would travel in straight lines. But it doesn't always. Christianity is like that very often. It doesn't always do the thing that we would guess that it would do. But I've gotten a little far afield, because right now we're not really even discussing the God of Christianity, although we are taking a look at the Christian worldview. We're looking at this God and saying, you know what? What he's telling us is complicated sometimes, just like the universe that we live in. And this world was created good. What has happened? Well, here's another uncomfortable truth that Lewis points out, and that is that Christianity is a lot closer. And in fact, the three major moral monotheistic religions that I listed are a lot closer to dualism than many people are comfortable with. You see, the Christian worldview does believe that there is an evil entity, and that entity is working actively toward evil. We get uncomfortable with that because we've managed to make a mockery of the concept of evil by putting it in little goat feet and horns and painting it red all the time. But this worldview does believe that there is an ongoing cosmic battle between good and evil, and that the God who created it and who set the moral law in motion is in fact on the good side. And that this opposing force in many ways has invaded the universe that we live in and is actively working to corrupt it. Is that the only view out there? No, of course not. Of course not. And we will take a look at an opposing view next week. Until then, I encourage you, light something you like. Tune in tomorrow. See whether you might like this blind monkey. Enjoy your afternoon.